This is where the Boston Massacre happens. This is where a bunch of little colonial kids throwing rocks at British soldiers and just totally intimidating soldiers until a soldier shoots and total chaos rings out. And I mean, a fight ensued first, and then colonists were killed, but there was a little propaganda that was, promoted after this event, but it unified the 13 colonies because they were so ticked off about how dare these British soldiers massacre, because we know it really wasn't a massacre.
The reason it wasn't a massacre is because a massacre, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, is defined as the act or an instance of killing a number of usually helpless or unresisting human beings under circumstances of atrocity or cruelty. No doubt that this was a violent event that unfortunately resulted in the deaths of 5 colonists, but this was not a one-sided tragedy. To understand what led up to this brawl, let's go back to what caused tensions between the British soldiers and colonial Bostonians in the first place. So there were a series of laws that the British government was passing and enforcing on the colonists. The colonists hated these laws because they did not have a voice in the government. They believed without their representation in the government that these laws were unfair. So the colonists began protesting these laws in different ways. There were a group of guys called themselves the Sons of Liberty, a little secret club of colonial men who organized to take action against the British government who were passing these unfair laws. Some of these guys were Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, John Adams, John Hancock, just to name a few. Anyway, they had meetings, wrote letters of correspondence to other colonial assemblies encouraging them to boycott British goods, and sometimes they used violence. Well, the British government responded to this violence by not only passing more laws without colonial representation, but they also sent more British troops to Boston to keep those Bostonians under control. As you can imagine, a strong military presence in Boston did not keep Bostonians under control. British soldiers camped out in the Boston Common, a favorite hangout spot for colonists, and since British soldiers weren't paid well, they took on second jobs. Colonial men started to complain that the soldiers were taking their jobs. Arguments and fights between soldiers and Bostonians were a common occurrence. Soldiers were taunted on a daily basis, with colonial kids shouting insults like lobsterbacks because of the red uniforms. Well, one day in March of 1770, a boy was yelling insults at a soldier standing guard at the government building. The soldier snapped and hit the boy with his gun, and an angry mob started to surround and attack the few soldiers who were clearly outnumbered by the angry mob who were throwing snowballs, ice balls, and rocks at the soldiers. Then a colonist knocks a gun out of one of the soldiers' hands. The soldiers panic and start shooting into a violent mob, not helpless or unresisting human beings. The soldiers also did not kill under circumstances of atrocity or cruelty. They were shooting because they were scared and they panicked. A drawing created in 1855 by William L. Chapney is probably a more accurate depiction of what really happened. You can see the first colonist who died at the center of the chaos, Crispus Attucks, in this representation of what happened at the site of the Boston Massacre. He is also represented more accurately in this image than the one created by Paul Revere. However, it was Paul Revere's inaccurate representation in his engraving that he titled The Bloody Massacre in King Street that actually united the colonies. By creating this propaganda, Paul Revere convinced the rest of the colonies that they needed to come together and stand up against the tyrannical British government.
I wonder what the side of the building on the other side over here is. But it was right up here, right? Well, this is
where it happened.
And here's the marker.
And if you look at Paul Revere's engraving, you can see in detail this building happening right behind the chaos.
It's still here.
It's still here.
The old State House. Wow.